Yeah, so this is my fourth video talking about Blair, which raises one very important question. Do you reckon Ruby Frank is jealous? Because I feel like I'm just moving on from an ex at this point, right? I made like 37 videos talking about Ruby Frank, and now all of a sudden I'm making a bunch of videos on another creator. Like, I reckon she's raging. So Ruby, if you are watching this video, just want to let you know, haven't forgot about you, alright? I'm sure in a few weeks you will do something very shitty, and I'll make another video talking about you, and it'll be back to normal, alright? Don't you worry. But yeah, today's video is about iilluminaughtii again, and honestly, I didn't want to make another video, even though they have been doing really well, you know, more views than I usually get, but I promise I didn't want to. Now, all jokes aside, I thought the topic was completely over, but that was until yesterday when WonderStruck, the person who made the very long Twitter thread that we went through in the last video, actually posted a video himself called My Response to iilluminaughtii Exposed, featuring Oz Media. And the video is actually 1 hour and 20 minutes long, and I have looked through it, and I've written some notes that I wanted to kind of talk about, but obviously I won't be able to cover every single point that was made in this video, in my video, so if you do want to actually get to every point, I'll leave a link to his video in the description. But yeah, like I said, I've written a few timestamps down that I wanted to talk about, so without further ado, let's actually get into WonderStruck's video. Oh, actually, wait! 2 seconds, you know the subscribe thing I keep doing in every video where I'm like begging you because I want to hit 400k? I'm doing that again, so if you could subscribe, that'd be great. Thanks. So the video starts off with WonderStruck defending the clique. If you remember, Blair actually started accusing the clique of allowing pedophiles on his Discord server, when in actual reality, when this was all going down, he was asleep. And WonderStruck actually brings up a very good point that I didn't even think about myself, and I just wanted to point it out.
But a personal question I would like to ask. If Blair had the information and documented evidence on a Discord server that, as she depicted, cultivated files, and truly believe this, why did she wait 3 years to come forward? Why did she allow the click on Sad Milk or play games with him in the free time? Why did she put a link for help for anyone affected by such actions of child grooming, yet didn't use her platform to speak up on a server and creator that is active to this day?
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better myself, personally. Like, Blair was really trying to make it seem as if the clique is just okay with pedophiles being in his Discord server, but then continued to be friends with him for some time after, and then never spoke about it up until now. Which in my eyes basically proves that she only brought this up to be malicious, but how malicious do you want to be to accuse someone of being okay with pedophiles in his Discord server? Like, could you not make up a different type of lie? I don't know, you could have said like he missed a few days of brushing his teeth 1 week or something, you know? You didn't have to like say he was okay with pedophiles. But anyways, WonderStruck goes on and brings up the fact that Blair started talking about his mental health in her video, which was a very private conversation. Now the reason why I didn't bring this up in my original video talking about Blair's response is because I didn't really know many of the people involved like I mentioned in my initial video. So I thought when she was bringing this up, it was already public knowledge and maybe WonderStruck spoke about it many times in videos. Obviously after seeing WonderStruck's new video here, I can see that's not the case. So what you're about to see is Blair just openly talking about WonderStruck's mental health without his permission and talking about very private conversations without his permission.
He would often tell both Oz Media and myself how living in Austin, Texas was a nightmare for him. He would often complain about his roommates being terrible people, his friends being mostly terrible people and unmotivated to do well in life, and how his car was always breaking down and how his channel was not going in the direction he wanted. And then he talked about that last bit of family that he had moving away and he was essentially alone. I won't speak on behalf of Oz, but I know I was moved by Wonder's stories.
So moved, in fact, that she decided to go behind his back and tell a very private story about his mental health to nearly 1 million people who've watched the video. Yeah, I can tell it really touched you. And the way she describes it, saying that WonderStruck would talk about his friends back home, it almost comes across as if she's trying to say that WonderStruck is like a bit two-faced almost. But then WonderStruck explains that what he was talking about is that where he lives back home in Texas, I believe, his friends didn't do YouTube. They didn't really understand YouTube, so he wanted to move somewhere so he'd be surrounded by people who are doing the same job as him, which is a very normal thing. That's literally the exact same reason I wanted to move to London a few years ago. And then she goes on to tell even more private details, but carries on saying things like, oh, this really touched me, I just wanted to help. But all this shite, just trying to come across as the good person here while she's telling a very private conversation. But after this, WonderStruck then goes on to rebuttal Blair's claims in her video about their living situation. So the way Blair describes it in her video is as if WonderStruck was actually staying around her house and he was overstaying his welcome, not paying rent, and he was just a bit of a nuisance really. But what WonderStruck says is that isn't the case. In fact, Blair wanted to get into real estate and that she wanted someone she knew to be her first tenant. WonderStruck was going to be that tenant and Blair was going to be the landlord. So it's going to be a win-win for both of them, right? Blair could get into real estate and WonderStruck would have a house. But then what ended up happening was the house wasn't ready for when it was supposed to be ready and actually got brought back a few months, hence why he overstayed, if you really want to say that.
Oz Media and I had just moved into his newly purchased home in April 2021, and he decided to welcome Wonder into his house. Unless Oz Media was doing so without my understanding, Wonder was not charged any rent, utilities, or internet for sharing our living space.
Yes, we had actually discussed a payment plan for rent. What Blair leaves out, and what I find very perplexing as to why she left out in her video, is that the reason I didn't pay rent was because I was going to become Blair's tenant. Not once does she mention throughout this video that when I first had the discussion of moving to Colorado, it was because Blair wanted to get her hands into the real estate market and wanted to build a home, something she had discussed with other former Sad Milk members. It wasn't just me.
Yeah, this is kind of like a theme in WonderStruck's video, is that he points out many times that Blair likes to miss out key details and miss out a lot of context and manipulate stories to make it seem as if it's a way that it isn't. Now in Blair's video, she really tries to make it seem as if WonderStruck was just like a lazy employee and wouldn't do work on time and whatnot, and WonderStruck actually brings in Oz Media, who lived in the house at the same time, and he confirms that WonderStruck wasn't actually given that much work, which Blair does kind of say a few times in her video too, whilst also saying that he's lazy, but Oz Media also confirms that WonderStruck was trying to get work, and he didn't like the fact he didn't have work.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't provided work for like a majority of the time that you were actually employed. I think we were also working on like Thinkology at the time, but like nothing really came out of that besides a couple recordings, and you ended up not really wanting to pursue that. So there wasn't like any work that she had actually given you part of the company. You were kind of just literally being paid to like stand around. I might be wrong on this, but you actively did try to like assist her with her like the candle shop that she was just starting up, and I mean, she didn't like that, but you were actively trying to seek out and find work, so it's not like you were just like freeloading off of it. You, from my memory, you were trying to actually earn your keep.
And then we get to see another example of Blair missing out key details in her story, as in her video, she goes on to say that WonderStruck was fired from the company, and one of his reasons was the fact that he was missing deadlines, to which WonderStruck says he didn't miss any deadlines because he was fired before the deadline even happened.
I continued his pay even though no work had ever been completed. Although there was only a minuscule amount of work for Wonder to do, he still managed to act up within company spaces. He made inappropriate comments on forms that were visible to other employees, he didn't complete tasks that were assigned to him, and he failed to follow company protocol.
Yeah, so here's the screenshots that WonderStruck actually shows of when he did get fired. As you can see, it was on July 30th. And then as we can see by this screenshot, his deadline was August 2nd, so he was fired before the deadline for this project. And also in that clip I just played, Blair says that WonderStruck was saying some inappropriate comments in forums, to which WonderStruck actually reached out to Oz Media, who obviously lived in the house at the time and was working with Blair, to see what the inappropriate comment was. And this was it. The inappropriate comment you made was along the lines of saying, if I could be an animal for a day, I would be a furry, and your favourite food was arse, which is a horrible, horrible thing to say. It's definitely worth losing your job for, and arguably it could be worth some prison time, but I'm not a judge. Now at this point in the video, we start getting towards the whole car situation, which we briefly spoke about in the last video. If you're not aware, Blair actually took out finance for a car for WonderStruck, and WonderStruck would send Blair the money for the repayments. But then she ended up taking that car back because they had like an agreement with certain terms in it, and she says that WonderStruck went against a few of the terms, but WonderStruck then goes on to debunk that. Now before we get into the actual key details of that whole situation, WonderStruck says that the reason why he was no longer living at Blair's house at this point when she took the car back was because he was having disassociative episodes and he was actually going to therapy for it. And when Blair found out about this, she basically told him to leave.
I told my therapist at this point that I hadn't felt real in a while, which anyone who has suffered with dissociation and dissociative episodes can all but relate to. I also reiterated how everything was starting to feel rather pointless and I didn't know what I was that's so lame. I don't like to get emotional, but I didn't know what I was doing wrong. After hearing this, she made it urgently clear that I needed to leave the house immediately.
Which are all details that Blair obviously leaves out of the story, right? There's a lot of details that are missed out of Blair's story, it seems. Now, WonderStruck debunks Blair's claims that he went against the contract, but we spoke about that in the last video. That was pretty easy to solve. Basically, Blair was saying that he didn't have insurance, but he did.
Here's my proof of insurance, and here's my official mailing address during this time.
And then he goes on to tell a story about Blair taking the car back, and obviously we know from my last video that when Blair took the car back, it still had WonderStruck's personal items in, a lot of expensive items that he still doesn't have back to this day. But the reason why she took the car back so secretively is because she messaged WonderStruck saying that she was in Texas and she wanted to take the car back, and he didn't reply. And the reason why he didn't reply is because it was 3 AM. he was asleep.
At roughly 3 a.m., Blair sent me a text stating that I had breached numerous contract violations and that she was in Texas to repossess the vehicle. It goes without saying I was asleep at this time, so obviously I did not see a message that was sent to me at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Which does raise the question, is Blair just a fucking night owl or something? Because everything she does seems to be at 3 a.m. The whole click situation with like the paedophile in the Discord and that he wasn't aware of it because he was asleep. And now she tries blaming WonderStruck for missing messages even though it was at 3 a.m. and he was asleep. Like, I'm not sure if she's just like a night person or she genuinely waits to these hours to do things because she knows she won't get a reply and like she can just kind of change the story to however she wants. And WonderStruck says that he tried getting his items back. There was like a camera, a monitor, a PlayStation console, just a bunch of expensive items. And he obviously never got these back. And the reason why he didn't is because when he would try and reach out, Blair would basically say that he's harassing her.
We were told by someone who represented Blair to back off or they would go after us for harassment.
Now at this point in the video, WonderStruck goes into a lot of details about his mental health, and if you want to go and see him talk about that, I would rather you go and see it on his video instead of me commentating about him talking about something so personal. Just feels a bit weird for me, I guess. It's basically something that doesn't need commentary, right? It's his own personal experience and his own mental health, so like I said, there's a lot of details I won't be talking about in this video that you can see in his video. But then we get to a very bizarre portion of the video where WonderStruck has to defend him being a dog owner. Because in Blair's video, she tries accusing WonderStruck of being like a bad dog owner and brings up a story as to when she woke up one time, WonderStruck's dog had shit everywhere. And obviously she was like fuming about it, I guess. Which I get might be annoying, right? There's shit all over your floor, but it doesn't really sound like a story you need to bring up in a YouTube video like 3 years after it happened, right? But WonderStruck goes into a lot of details of this whole situation. So I'll try and paraphrase it the best I can because it's mental that he even has to try and like explain himself for this. But WonderStruck's dog actually managed to run like out of the back gate at one point and was gone for a few hours, to which WonderStruck ended up staying outside till like the early hours of the morning, like hoping that he'd come back, trying to find him. He eventually did find the dog, brought him back. He ended up going to sleep because he was knackered because he'd stayed up all night trying to find his dog. The dog had ended up like eating something when he was out because he was just by himself doing a runner, probably eating whatever he could find, and that's affected his stomach, and then he ended up shitting on the floor. And Blair's brought this up to say that WonderStruck's a bad dog owner for some reason.
She paints me to be a dismissive, uncaring father to a starving, aggressive, abused dog. This dog right here. This dog who's scared of fucking leaves.
And then it cuts to Oz Media in this video, who ends up defending WonderStruck and says by the time Blair actually found this out, it was already getting cleaned up.
You know, Blair and I, of course, we weren't happy to see that initially, but when we had gone upstairs, you were already cleaning up the mess.
But yeah, like I said, it's a very bizarre thing to bring up in the first place, like trying to use the fact that your dog shit on the floor, like, against you. I don't really get it. But then as we're getting to the end of the video, you might remember WonderStruck actually showed some pictures from Blair's house showing how messy it was, and like, it was basically, there was boxes everywhere, and it just didn't seem like a nice place to live in. And in Blair's video, she goes on to say that this is an invasion of privacy, and it's going against not only her, but also Oz Media.
This was a room that we told you we were using to move, and we let you know it was off limits to you. That photo alone shows your consistent lack of respect for Oz's and my boundaries.
But then it's just trying to make WonderStruck look like the bad person here for going into a room that he's not supposed to and taking a picture of the mess to use against them. Turns out Oz Media was actually the one who took the picture in the first place and was embarrassed by the fact that Blair was always such a messy person.
This is tricky to talk about just because like that was like the condition of living with Blair. Like that's always how it has been. No matter how many times cleaning was attempted, it always ended up becoming that level of mess. There was no cleaning in that house. It was always a disaster. No matter how many times attempts were made, it would take less than a week or two for things to re-messify. I even remember on my 22nd birthday, I had asked like, hey, can we please get like the kitchen and living room cleaned up so we actually have like a space to exist? And that was like my birthday present for that year, was cleaning the kitchen and the living room. There was no clean. It was always like that. It wasn't just one room, it was every room.
And then to end the video, Oz Media goes on to explain that Blair likes to like fake cry a lot, in his opinion.
There's not really a nice way that I can actually say this. I've like watched her build those tears up on multiple occasions, whether it's she forgot she had a prior engagement, so she built up tears and said, I have to take Casper to the vet and I'm very scared so I won't be able to make it, or for talking to other like content creators that she's had issues with, of welling up those tears for like apologies, for talking with employees, for talking with me. or her roommates. It's something that I have watched her do on numerous occasions. If they were genuine, I mean, there's that, but I have a really hard time believing it with how many times I've actually seen her build those tears up.
So yeah, that is the end of the video. A lot of this is opinion based, like the whole like fake crying thing. Like, how the fuck are we supposed to know that's true or not? So I guess it is just a case of what you believe at this point. Obviously, there is like evidence for certain parts of the situation that don't really go in Blair's favor, but like I said, a lot of this is just opinion based, so I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And yeah, I'm gonna leave the video there, so if you did enjoy, please leave a like down below, subscribe if you are new, and like I said, I'm gonna leave the full link to WonderStruck's video in the link in the description. And yeah, until the next one, I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright, goodbye.